Right. Good morning, everybody. Good to see you all here. And welcome to this, the second of these compassion check-ins. I just thought I'd just change the view so that we've got this kind of view. And I'm so thrilled to see so many familiar faces who were here last time. And Ian Dodds, a very warm welcome to you, sir, to joining us for the first time.
Thank you.
Good to see you here. It's great, we've got a photograph of you, just as I remember you from last seeing you, so it's lovely to see you. And if you've got a camera, feel free to join us. Leigh, feel free to unmute yourself so we can hear your magical words. And
Hi.
Hi there. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Hi there, Ian. Good to see you all. Welcome to this, the second Compassion Check-In. Last week was the very first of these events, which is really about helping us move from a place of perhaps anxiety, uncertainty around the current circumstances that we find ourselves in, to a place of inner peace for ourselves and those in our lives and our families and so on. Last week when we ran the very first Compassion Check-In, many of us were finding, certainly in places like the UK, being in isolation or in semi-lockdown was very, very new. So, and that happened probably just about the week before. So I thought that of running these particular events for lots of people who might be going through all sorts of things personally, with people in their family, in terms of work uncertainties, all sorts of things that is happening for many of us. And I suspect that things are shifting and will shift day by day, week by week. And last week we had people from all over the world on the call, and that was very, very powerful. Just going to admit somebody else. Welcome, Iris. Welcome. Good to hear you, and welcome onto the call here. And we might have a few more people who might be joining us. Based on one of the things that emerged last week, where we had somebody who was on the line from actually the NHS, I decided to particularly dedicate today's session, particularly to those of us and those of people out there who are in different ways, carers, healers, supporters, volunteers, teachers, those people in all sorts of different roles supporting us. And that includes the incredible people who are doing wonderful work in places like the NHS, care support, care homes, but also just through to people who are looking after loved ones or family members who might well be unwell at right now. Those people are public servants. I know that you've got a long history in civil service, for example, Rob. All sorts of people who do incredible work, right through to people who we often don't see, the tube drivers, the bus drivers, the delivery workers, all sorts of people do incredible things right now. So that's what today's all about, really dedicating it to those people, although not exclusively, but I know that many of us will play a number of those roles. Hi there, Iris, good to see you, and good to see you. Jill, welcome here for the first time. And Jill, feel free to take yourself off of mute and to join in the conversation as well. I just wonder, actually, I just wonder if there's anything that is bubbling up for anyone right away. If there's anything that's on anyone's mind that you're keen to put on the table, first of all. I was going to start off with a little bit of silence. Oh, Dr. Martin, please do share.
All right. I think one of the things that I find rather troubling at this moment in time is the fact that so little is being actively done to provide tests for staff who are going to be saving our lives and who are going to be maintaining the well-being of the nation. I mean, it's a conversation, excuse me, it's not just a conversation, it is a point of derision and concern and comparative research between the UK, Germany, and other nations. There was a very good report on the news this morning about testing and about the importance of making sure that if, for example, you have members of staff who haven't been tested and they're in isolation and they want to come to work and cannot, then we need to overcome that particular state of affairs and also for those who are saving everyone's lives, who are not being provided with the proper protective equipment. That is also of real concern to me, because we absolutely cannot lose our workforce in the National Health Service. And I think that's what I wanted to say at the beginning.
Yeah, and I can see Ian's really nodding with you on that. Ian, I just wonder, is there anything that you wanted to say immediately, or was it just real agreement with what Dr. Martin?
No, just real agreement.
Yeah, absolutely. I wonder, just to start off with, can I just ask a show of hands, or Jill, you can, there's the side notice here if you're wanting to post anything here at any particular time. Then do feel free to, type anything into the sidebar. So you just go along to the bottom that says chat and to type in, or if you want to add the video, then you're welcome to. But otherwise, just feel free to participate via audio. Can I just ask for a show of hands or for a comment in the box? Those of you who are in any way, shape or form, either a carer or a healer, a supporter of other people, formally or informally, if you play that kind of role. It might be in your family, or you are a carer, or you perhaps volunteer, or you just have that kind of role where people look to you in times like these. If any of you play that kind of a role, then yeah. Can I ask you, if I might, in what way, if you're happy to share, in what way do you play that role? Oh, Darren, I don't know if you can hear me. I just wanted to...
Yeah, we can. I just didn't, I'm not so in love with my own voice that I need to hear myself all the time.
Oh, no, I meant Darren. I beg your pardon, Doctor. So sorry, Doctor. Yeah, so Darren, I just wonder, you had your hand up there.
Yes. I've currently got my grandmother in a care home at the moment, in a full nursing care home. So I'm her power of attorney as a family member who's a lawyer. And I go there as often as I can, but pre-COVID-19, I was there 3 or 4 times a week, but post-COVID-19, I haven't been, but I've been keeping in touch with the staff. Mm-hmm. And also my own mother is ailing at the moment. She's waiting on a knee operation. So I'm the support for her, taking shopping in and making sure she's okay, giving her crosswords and word searches to keep her going. And obviously my professional field, as I was saying to you before the conference, everyone is phoning up about the employment laws. I'm not an employment lawyer, but I have obviously good knowledge of employment law. Everyone's worried about their job security and the furlong scheme and the self-employed and the employed. So I feel like I'm kind of a person that everyone's coming to for help, support and guidance. But be that as it may, I'm trying my best to assist.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting when we play a number of those roles, when in our own family we've got that role, and then there's that professional that role. That can be quite a lot. How are you? Can I ask, how are you? Are you finding that? Is it more challenging now than usual? And I can see that Rob's just also posted a comment. I'm going to turn to him.
Yes, it's quite challenging because we don't know how long this is going to go on for. BDNHS is under immense strain and pressures, not only with COVID-19, but with other people that need beds and general emergencies and general things that happen in the run of the mill. Yes. So yes, it's got its pressures, but we just have to take one day at a time and go with the flow, if I could put it like that.
Yeah. And Rob, I wonder if you might be happy to share something. You were just talking about being a carer yourself, and I know we've got Iris on the line as well, who works in the charity field. It might be interesting to hear her take. But yeah, Rob, if we can turn to you.
Well, firstly, my mum's 76. I'm one of 2 siblings, so it's a shared responsibility. But my brother has a pre-existing condition where he was self-isolating early. He has a pre-existing heart condition, so he's not able to do as much as perhaps he would like. Mm-hmm. So mum's only 8 miles away. So again, I feel blessed. It's not, the worst journey in the world, although all journeys need to be considered at this present time. So it's really just about, thus far on about 3 or 4 occasions, just getting along to mum with, as Darren was just saying, some of the mental stimulation. So mum's a bit of a reader. She likes some of those sort of weekly and monthly magazines, leaving those on the doorstep, milk, bread, some of the staple stuff that she consumes, and then just leaving her at the gate and just making sure she's all right. So, thus far, God bless, she's symptom free, but we just have to keep her an even more of an eye on her, as it were. We also started up, again, coincidentally, really, it was pre-COVID, we started up a WhatsApp group for about 12 or 14 connected roads around where I live. We're a quite close community. We've had a couple of street parties over the years. We're well known to each other. It's not quite a village, but it is a well-known community. And we've identified post-COVID a real priority around helping some of the known elders. We've got an older person next door to her, in fact, Marie. And so it's just about making sure they're getting what they need and that they're okay, and doing that a bit more than we happen to be doing it anyway, but doing it a bit more than usual.
Yeah.
So
and Rob, I'd imagine that in the current climate, that's far more tricky than it would have been even a few weeks ago. You know, even a thing like going to a supermarket has become for many people something that can be quite
the whole
daunting.
2 meter thing. Absolutely. Yeah.
Leigh, I wonder, I'd just like to turn to you for a moment, because I know you're joining us from Barcelona, and I know that things are quite a lot is developing there. I don't know what's happening right there at the moment. There's a microphone or is tearing a piece of paper. So Leigh, I just want to turn to you. I just wondered what the situation there is with Barcelona. I know that you've been kind of keeping an eye out for other people. Now, somebody's got a microphone that is making a noise. Now, if you've got anything that's making a noise, then just be mindful. Mute us for what? But okay, I'm going to turn to you, Leigh. Yeah.
Okay. So I just wanted to quickly, before I say about Barcelona, I wanted to welcome my dear friend Bill, who's calling in all the way from South Africa, from Johannesburg. So, and I know that she's a great, she's a great carer as well in her own right. I've known Jill for a very long time, and she's always very kind and very considerate with all people around her. I know with neighbors around her, and just these little things that people are doing in such kind of usually invisible ways that people don't recognize, but you know, just to kind of send some love and support out to all of those. I think that's so much what you said today was all about, to Rasheed, to acknowledge those people. The situation in Barcelona is escalating very fast, very, very quickly. We are personally, we're very safe here where we are. We haven't been out much at all. We've been kind of in strict lockdown for about 3 weeks. We have in the evening people joining together and do some applause and some gratitude for all of the care workers and the hospital staff. We're in an apartment building with 10 flats. So on the weekend, some paramedics arrived and took some elderly folks downstairs, and one of the ladies was obviously she was very ill, and they'd come in all the hazmat suits and all kinds of things, so that made it very, very real for us. I mean, we've been following this for a long time. We were in Nepal for some months ago when all of this kind of started, and I guess my biggest concern for everyone is that there's so many places in the world where there's absolutely no tests or nothing being done, absolutely no medical facilities or anything like that. So now I'm from South Africa originally, and the medical system there is atrocious. It's kind of non-existent. A lot of people have private healthcare, but the facilities are obviously not ready for anything like this. However, on the other hand, you know, people are also very resilient. They're used to dealing with all kinds of other difficulties. So sometimes it's even in some of the poorer countries or in some of the less developed countries that the people are, they're much more able to cope in a strange way with this, because suffering or difficulty isn't so new to people. In other countries like in Spain and in Italy, where the health systems are usually more resilient, it's more of a shock to people from our, you know, perception anyway, watching news and with some friends and some WhatsApp groups connected here. So it's all very, very interesting. But I think in terms of other carers as well, and just people who are serving the community, you know, going to the stores and supermarkets and things like that. We've literally only been out once to go and do things like that. But you can see that a lot of the servers and people are obviously very nervous helping. There's some screens in front of people at the moment. They've started wearing masks and gloves like that. Whereas about 3 weeks ago, nobody was at all conscious of what was happening here. And I think that that's definitely changed a lot. And just small things I think all of us can do when we meet these people is to really acknowledge what they're doing, that they are also on the front line. You know, these people that are, you know, serving us in this way, handling money, you know, being kind, being gentle. They're very, very gentle to everybody that comes, especially some of the older folks. They're giving them some more care and attention, which is really heartwarming to see, because obviously everybody is quite scared. But just a simple thing like a smile can really make someone's day and encourage them to stay energized to help everybody. So it's these very tiny little things, you know, just gratitude. Thank you for serving me when you leave. We don't speak Spanish very well. But just if you know, the other day I was wearing a mask when I went, and we could connect with our eyes. We could smile at each other. It didn't matter that you didn't have teeth to show anymore, but you could still make that human connection with each other, which is very powerful, actually.
I think there's something very powerful in that, Leigh, and it makes me think of something that Dr. Martin was saying earlier on. I think, first of all, just picking up with what you ended with, I think that's such an important point, and I think something we can learn a lot with lots of us, and I think most of us here on the call today are based in and around London, whereby that thing about that acknowledgement or that smile, or particularly those people who are helping, serving and so on, because it must be incredibly challenging for them. And then when you add on the thing about the protective equipment, and for those people particularly on the front line that Dr. Martin was talking about, that's quite something. I'm keen to turn to both Ian and Iris. Iris, can I turn to you first? Iris, I know that I've known you for a number of years, and I know that you've got a long history of working in and around charities. Tell me, first of all, what's it that's brought you here to this call today, and anything that comes to your mind as somebody whose whole career has been around that thing, around serving and supporting others and good causes. Tell us anything that you might want to share.
Well, yeah, it's interesting. So this charity I'm working for at the moment, the first thing to say is we are all home based. Anyway, it's a charity where we have team members across the country, so we are used to work remotely. So in a funny sort of way, not much has changed, except that there are, admittedly, we had occasional meetings with partners we're working with, and that doesn't happen. So in a funny sort of way, not much has changed for us. What I find quite challenging at the moment is that I'm the only daughter, I'm the only child. My father is in a care home in Germany. My mother was suddenly, essentially kicked out, you know, within an hour, 2 or 3 weeks ago, that they made an announcement in Germany that all care homes are shut to the public. And, you know, and little things like it was his birthday last weekend, and it's the first time in over 50 years that they haven't spent a birthday together, and she can't see him. So that's really difficult, and I know that I can't get there. So, you know, that's making the whole thing quite, you know, difficult. But it's also an interesting thing, being obviously speaking German. So I watch actually more information and news in Germany, and I find it interesting how different countries are dealing with the situation, share information, and how people react to that. I find it's a much more adult to adult conversation that's going on in Germany. So that's an interesting thing. But the other observation I would have, so we had to suspend as a charity now, so we had to suspend our programs because we work with children in school, and obviously that's not happening. So that was quite a shock for us this week, that we actually had to take advantage of this furlough system. So as of today, there's just a handful of us left.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a really strange thing to be, you know, one of the few left behind. But something was, what was the lady in Barcelona's name, was saying, you know, that really strikes me as well, you know, so actually it's still a luxury thing that we can't do the things that we normally do with young people, and it's all about inspiration and communication skills and life skills, etc. But in the bigger picture, you know, the charities I worked for before, they were really poor countries where you work with very vulnerable people. You know, so the last charity I worked for, we had projects in Nepal, and I know in India they closed down a lot of the businesses, and people are migrating back home. And you think of all the people who had to leave Nepal to work in India because they have no money, you know, and they have to migrate back. They're vulnerable, they're not very healthy people in the best case, you know, and they possibly bring this now back to rural communities in Nepal, where they don't even have the basic health system, never mind being vaguely equipped for something like that. So in some ways, I actually feel I'm in quite a luxurious place. So that's actually quite surreal.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Iris. And first of all, you know, I really feel for you, and all of those people are in that situation where they can't see their loved ones. And for those people that I know, there are other people in that situation where perhaps they're displaced, and where they've got relative, you know, they've got family in different parts of the world and so on. And for your parents not being able to spend a birthday for the first time in 50 years. I mean, first of all, how incredible. I mean, that, you know, that relationship, and how sad then to find an isolation on top of an isolation in this situation must be really, 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 really difficult. And I can imagine that thing that you're saying about that bittersweet at the same time. Also, when you reflect on the charity work, while situations very difficult here, being aware, having done work internationally, how still there's lots of things relatively in place. It might be interesting to hear from Jill in a moment. Ian, I just wonder if I could come to you. Tell us what's brought you onto the call today, and if you'll be happy to just share with everyone on this call who you are and what you do.
Okay, well, I'm here because I thought it would be an interesting topic to discuss. What I do, in fact, is I build inclusive cultures in organizations to help them drive high performance, great customer service, race and gender equality, innovation, complex change, high levels of employee engagement, and high levels of employee well-being. I'm the Lotus Award winner 2017 for Lifetime Achievement in Pioneering Inclusive Cultures.
Wonderful.
I'm also a coach and a mentor.
Wonderful. And
a counselor.
Wonderful. So you're a busy man. And are people, how are you finding in your work with all those hats, Ian? What's happening in those worlds? And what's the impact on that? Are more people turning to you for all sorts of support now at the current time?
I wish they were. No, they're not.
Okay. Is that because lots of things are closed, programs are being...
Presumably, I don't know, of course.
Yeah. And I guess that's a situation that many of us are in, isn't it? Not knowing, and there's some crossover with Rob's work. And I wonder, Jill, if you're able to hear us, and you're joining us from South Africa, thank you so much. I wonder, Jill, if you'll be happy to just tell us a little bit about yourself. And Leigh was speaking warmly of you and that you support others. It would be lovely just to hear a few words from yourself. Hi there, Jill. Yeah, if you can hear us, it'd be lovely to hear from you. Oh yeah. If you could turn up your volume a little bit more, Jill, I can just about hear you. Hi there, Jill. I think I can hear a parrot. Jill, I can't quite hear you yet. Jill, I wonder if you've got your microphone on mute. So if you glance at the the bottom of the screen, you'll see that there are, hi Maggie, and meanwhile, you'll see, Jill, that there is a number of buttons, and there's one called mute, and if you press, which is the one on the left, if you press that, then you should be able to be heard. So it'll be lovely to hear you, Jill, if you can. Meanwhile, Maggie, thank you so much for joining us. I don't want to put you on the spot, but I just wondered, Maggie, what's brought you on the call today? And I know you were here with us last time, and funny enough, we were just hearing from Ian, who works in the field of inclusivity within organisations and so on, similar to your work. I just wonder if you'd share what's brought you onto the call today and where your heart is at right now.
Okay, well, firstly, sorry that I'm late. I've been redeployed and I'm doing interviews for people, and then I just remembered compassion. So I'm here literally as a bit of a check-in to make sure that I'm having the right attitude towards doing different work, making sure I'm, you know, that I'm looking after myself, but I'm being as available to other people as possible. So, you know, in this climate where people are desperately looking for work, I want to make sure that I'm being compassionate even in the way that I'm conducting these interviews with people, if that makes sense. So yeah, it's a bit of a check-in to not just get into a automated way of working, but to really think about how I'm looking after myself and being appropriate with people.
Such an important point, isn't it, for those of us where there are these two roles that we play. I mean, it's a theme that Rob started us off with and is coming throughout for those of us who both have significant roles, and then we're supporting other people as well. And of course, you work in an NHS mental health trust, so I'd imagine that things are very pronounced there. Anything you're wanting to say about that? I can imagine that for anyone working in any kind of hospital,
wow,
it must be quite a challenging time right now.
Mm.
It is. It definitely. Oh, hi, Rob.
Hi, Maggie.
Hi. So yeah, it definitely is a challenging time. It's really interesting actually, because where you've got nurses that are on the front line having to forget about their own internal fears and anxieties and just be on the front line, I'm actually redeployed helping people who want to volunteer to work in the trust and to sort of, if you like, put themselves in the line of fire. So there's so much stress in the organisation at the moment, but at the same time you're seeing the opportunities that people are having to work differently and to give of themselves in the way that they hadn't necessarily given of themselves before. So very interesting times.
Yeah.
Very interesting times.
Yeah, and now we've just also been joined by, Rob, you're not the only OBE, I'm afraid, on the line now. We have Mia Morris, OBE.
Merrier, more merrier.
Mia Morris, can you hear us? Mia, I wonder if you can hear us. Again, Mia, you might want to just check the bottom of your screen, and also Jill, right along the bottom, there's a mute button, which is the first, the microphone button. And if you press that, you should be able to be heard. And Jill and Mia, if you're finding that you can't hear or your audio hasn't been connected, what you might want to do is log out and then log back in, and you should be able to be heard. But Mia, I wonder if you can hear us, in which case I'll... And Jill, can you hear us? Ah, who's that? Is that Mia or is that Jill? Oh, I can't hear you. Okay, well, one of the things I wondered that we might be able to do, and perhaps Mia and Jill, do quickly check in on your mics, and if the mics aren't working, then feel free to log out and log back in. One of the things I wondered if it might be quite nice for us to do, first of all, given the things that people have already said in this call, is I'm going to invite us maybe in a moment or two just to take maybe a couple of minutes in silence, just to be thinking about those people who are helping, supporting, serving us visibly and invisibly. And in fact, yeah, I think actually I'm going to invite us to do that in silence. So I'm going to invite us to, if you want to perhaps close your eyes or just be in your own space. And we're just going to take a couple of minutes of silence, either in terms of, or both in terms of just replenishing ourselves, but also whilst we're just being here in silence for a couple of minutes, we're just going to let that silence be our little offering for those people who are perhaps very busy in hospitals, in transportation in supermarkets and armed services in all sorts of places supporting us. I'm just going to invite us just to take 2 minutes just to be in silence. Invite us in our own time just to come back into the here and now. And actually, that was quite nice for me. What came to mind for me was I was just thinking, I'm about half a mile away from one of London's major hospitals that I've done some work for. And I was just reflecting on something that you were saying there, Maggie, of thinking about the health environment that you work in. And I was just thinking about some of the contacts at this local hospital near me. And whilst I don't know many people who are frontline, I know lots of people who are doing really important work in workforce, which I'm sure you can identify with, whereby right now there must be all sorts of challenges. And then just thinking about the point that you made, Dr. Martin, about those people perhaps without protective gear and how they must be feeling right now. And I was just hearing a number of the reports. I was touched by, I don't know if many people have heard, the mayor of New York, who's been on the news a lot at the moment, and him talking about health workers who are just working shift on shift on shift, and just realizing how, grateful, and sometimes without the silence, we just don't even think of those people. I wonder if anyone wants to kind of come in at that moment. Maggie, I'm tempted to come back to you on that, actually. I know at the moment you're doing work in terms of, where people are needing to be redeployed. Have you got any sense of how people are just coping with just lots of challenges, albeit in a different kind of health environment? What's your sense of how people are coping? Are people coping, or people just getting on with it as best they can?
That's an interesting question. I'm a bit removed from it because I'm actually working from home.
Yeah.
So I am removed, but when I have gone into the office, it's a real mixture, depending on where you work. So there are some functions that, yes, you can do from home. Other functions, you've got to come in irrespective. And so there are teams where people are self-isolating, and so, that they are stretched. At the same time, I guess as a trust, we try to be as proactive as possible. So we've got childcare facilities, believe it or not, emergency childcare facilities. So our training department has cancelled all of its training, and so that we can put on emergency childcare for key workers that can't get care elsewhere. Amazing. So, you know, so there's opportunities where, okay, there's creativity and ingenuity occurring, and I think what we did initially, we didn't have any toys or anything, so we put a call out, and I think a local, I can't remember who it was, but there were some toys that were donated from business. So on the one hand, we can be stretched, and on the other hand, there are these sparks of ingenuity. And I mean, just my reflection on going in and helping recruitment out. Literally, I pick up the phone, it was a hotline, pick up the phone. What we are doing is we're recruiting for like emergency admin, drivers, porters. So I was covering the phone, and you're literally hearing about people saying, oh yes, I own a driving company, and our guys are just sitting there in the lot with nothing to do. We're welcome to send our drivers in to help you. Wow. You know, I've got this situation, or I just want to help. Wow. So literally people just being so responsive and compassionate. And at the same time, I'm hearing, I shouldn't say which trust, but at the same time, I'm hearing about staff that are like petrified to come in and not coming in. So it's a whole mixture of things that I'm experiencing and seeing. So yeah, some people are really stressed. I mean, literally, when I was on that telephone line, I'd finish one call, put the phone down. I couldn't even count to 6 seconds before the next call was you know, the phone was ringing. I mean, literally from 8:30 through to 4:30. That was how busy it was. So that's just to show you, you know, the temperature really. But it's just straight from the phone. It's really.
And I think Martin's got a question. I think it might be a question for you. Yeah, Martin.
It's, I think, more of an observation than a question, but very definitely, Maggie, you can comment on this. And also, I think his name is Ian. I have, for the majority of my life, I've worked in higher education as a university lecturer, so teaching and learning. Another part of my role is employability, and that is preparing students who have completed, they may be in their final year, and they're looking for internships, along with students who have graduated and are looking for internships. At this point in my life, I deal with a lot of international students. And so what I'm aware of through news coverage and media coverage is that the over 35s, I'm actually just going to bracket it there, the over 35s in the United Kingdom have shown extraordinary generosity of time, resources, energy, and that vital thing called inspiration, you know, acts of kindness that bring about a sense of camaraderie, inclusion, and being a part of how do we work through this together. And you don't, every single evening on the news, you will hear different kinds of stories about people who are volunteering time, resources, energy, and everything else. What I'm not hearing and what I don't see at the moment is with people between the ages of, say, 20 to 30 who are making a contribution in their own time and life, things that keep them going and things that inspire other young people in their 20s to motivate themselves, share amongst each other, and keep themselves not just on point, but it's opening up your creative thinking that leads to an understanding of how can I help myself. And I'm aware of so little that's being done on their own behalf to sustain their energy level and their process of how do I make the connection into employability at this moment in time. I don't have to state the obvious to say that a lot of companies are not hiring at the moment, but a number of companies are. But then there's also voluntary work. Doing voluntary work, of course, develops your employability skills and awareness around how to cope in a crisis, what is client management, how do you work cooperatively, and so on. So when I hear what you've been saying, Maggie, around the phones are ringing all the time, which reminds me of clearing in universities once the exam results come out, and people want to know, am I actually going or am I not? And I'm thinking about how do we send a message to people in their 20s about energizing and motivating themselves to engage more fully, rather than I'm stuck in the house and I haven't got anything to do and I'm just depressed.
Well, and I just wonder also on that, Maggie may have views, but I'm keen to also turn to Rob Neal, OBE, who is also one of the I've forgotten the title that you trustee of Reach Society. I wonder if you.
What was that title?
Yeah, I'll let Rob say.
The Reach Society. If you type in reachsociety.com.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to dovetail with the point you were making anyway, but it sounds like Rash is lining us up. So I'll go with your steer, Rash.
Yeah. So Rob, I just wondered, picking up on what Martin was saying there, do you have a view, because Reach Society is particularly aimed at inspiring young people in their lives, and I know you also happen to mentor. I wonder if you have a view on this point about the younger generation. And I know the younger generation, and every young generation gets often stick as well. So I'd love to know your thoughts and your views and your observations on this.
Yeah. Well, I have a couple of views, actually. I was inspired by what Dr. Martin had to say, because I think a lens that I found myself looking through because of the work I do was that very point about mobilization and about inspiration that comes from winning a personal and private victory to make one's contribution to the world around them. And of course, many of us on this call will appreciate that we are in a time that's not just unprecedented for those of us in leadership positions, but it's unprecedented for followers too. It's unprecedented for those who have yet to carve out a journey on a career path. It's unprecedented for all of us. And so any of the insecurities that we may feel as mature, adult, giving, sharing human beings also lands perhaps in a different place, but also lands for our younger people too. And whilst they may hit the ground running in terms of technology and being up for changing times, unprecedented is unprecedented. So it's a challenge all the way around. I want to make 2 points on that platform. Firstly, it struck me with some of the work I'm doing by day at the Department for Education that the response to COVID-19 is about using some of the existing systems to further inform those in positions of leadership. You mentioned that much of today is dedicated, Rash, to a range of workers, heroes and sheroes who we know are on the front line, and our heart really does go out to them, and doing what we can to, as was said on the previous compassion check-in, about reducing the disturbance and the noise for them and clearing the path for them to do all that they do, because what they do is so invaluable and is in fact so precious. It's often about saving lives. But also the way it translates in the Department for Education is about how do we support senior leaders to make considered decisions, take considered decisions, and do all that's needed at this time of crisis, because they too are struggling with the unprecedented nature of it all. And while some of us can win private victories and personal victories because whether we lean on our faith, whether we are able to fit a tap to our past experiences that make sense of the present day, whether we have networks and relationships with others that sustain us, whether we have music and ways of finding a way through, it's how do we connect with others to help them offer their best and see themselves through. Linked to the young people's challenge. You mentioned Rash, and so I'll echo the reference. At Reach Society, and for anyone who wants to look this up or anyone who's tickled by this work, just type in www.reachsociety.com. We're in our 10th year now, so absolutely around before COVID-19. We had no fewer than 4 career conferences, 4 lined up in the diary for the next 8 or 9 weeks. I'm seeing Maggie nodding. She may have heard of a couple of them, but we had two events lined up in Birmingham, one in Luton, one in Leicester, and our biggest event was lined up for next week, Tuesday, in fact, here in London. They've all been postponed, not cancelled, just postponed. And it's all about the target audience, Dr. Martin. The target audience are 18 to 21-year-olds, and it is about supporting them on their journey from education into employment, acting as a catalyst. We've got over 30, we lined up over 38. Rash has been involved and helped us on this journey. And we lined up 38 partners, including Oxford University, including HarperCollins, the publishers, including all of the national services. And we've had publishing companies. We've had speed role modeling, all sorts of activities to act as a spark to get them in touch with how can they make their contribution in the present day. And we're going to be putting something on later in the year. We're not yet fresh through the platform in terms of whether it's Zoom or another potential offering, but we're now, we're beyond London now. We were pan-London up until 2 years ago. We're now national. And we've got 73 role models on our books. And the final point I just want to make, and I think it was something that was alluded to earlier, it is about, very often we find, it's our experience, it's not the only experience out there, but what we found at Reach Society, it is about that if I can see it, I can be it. And so by putting our young people in proximity to doctors, journalists, carers, health workers, accountants,
lawyers like Darren,
lawyers, absolutely. by doing all of that stuff, we can convert the kind of otherwise dream or aspiration into a reality and help them into employment. And that's what we've dedicated our lives to at Reach Society. And you can go and check us out on the website. We're alongside and in partnership with other organizations that are doing great work too. Our strapline is building connections. So we just want as many people to know about Reach Society as possible, because we want to put young people in proximity to their aspiration and ambition so that they can fulfill their potential.
There's a few themes that are coming through to me from this call. And there's the thread about leadership, which I do want to come back to, which I think is so important right now, including, as you say, Rob, that the leaders are struggling. There's this theme about the younger generation, including perhaps the support they might need and encouragement, and that, nudge also, perhaps also, which is also very, very, very important. Yeah. And also there's this theme about what all sorts of incredible charity and voluntary groups, like from Iris's, and I wonder if Iris, for example, you might type in the address of your charity also in the chat box, which is just, you'll probably see on the right-hand side. It'll be really useful. So there's that thread and that bit as well, which is really, really important.
I'd just like to ask something, please, Rasheed.
Yeah, please.
And that is, for the hundreds of students who are going into a multitude of professions, so they have the aspirations to go into professional services. But what I see, and particularly at this moment in time, it's not just the students that I see through my work, but also when I think of my friends who so many of them have children. And what I'm aware of is their inability or reluctance or reticence to actively get themselves up and actually do something. We are so often providing them with links, providing them with care, providing them with things that we hope is going to be their call to action, because we know the value and the benefits and the ways in which that actually manifests itself in things that are tangible. But what is perplexing is their inability or reluctance or fear of actually doing things for themselves. It's as though, well, if I don't try to do that, then I can't make a mistake by doing that, so I won't be bothered to do that. Or I'll only do that when I have absolute proof that it works. But so often, absolute proof that something works is by you actually doing it.
I'm actually really intrigued about.
Oh, Iris, you just
Yeah, I'm starting to get really intrigued about, you know, some of the people here and synergies really. So I've just put our web address in. The charity I work for is called John Egan Trust, and John Egan was a Red Arrow pilot, and he died in 2011 in Bournemouth during a display. And his
the parrots there. So sorry to interrupt. I bet you there are parrots. Are the parrots?
Yeah, I'm sorry, it's Henry.
Hi, Henry. Okay, welcome, Henry.
Henry and Chloe. And his widow, Emma Egan, she established the trust. So one thing John Egan was very passionate about was to inspire young people. And so the John Egan Trust works with young people who are at risk of dropping out of education. And so we have a fantastic network of really interesting corporate partners, and we work mainly with military bases. So we have a whole program about communication skills, leadership, etc., also about employability. And the whole model is that we expose young people to interesting careers, and they can actually meet people who can share their story, show how they work. And we had fantastic feedback from teachers that the children who were disengaged, wouldn't communicate, or were actually not coming to school, not studying, they all, 90% of the people who come to the programs, they're really inspired, and they start to have a vision what they can do. And the age range we're working with is actually before they leave school. So, you know, I'm absolutely fascinated, because one thing we were considering is, so how can we extend that? So because we're depending on the school and work with them in school time. But the hardest thing is, then how do they move on into professional life, and how we can support them? So I'm totally fascinated.
Most of them doing their Abitur?
Sorry?
Are most of them doing their Abitur?
What we don't have at the moment.
What's that for those of us who don't know? If you could explain that, Abitur?
It's, no, I get that, it's A-levels, isn't it?
Oh.
Yeah.
I get that. No, because so some of them, they only come for 5 to 10 sessions. Some come over 3 years. But once they've been through our programs, there are very few we have tracked, you know, because they disappear in the system. So that's one thing we're trying to figure out, how we can follow them. So there are some who have come back to us to share quite proudly what kind of careers they have now, but for most of them, we do not know, you know, how they develop thereafter. We just get the teachers' feedback that, you know, how they react in school.
I just want to pick up. Sorry.
Does Ian have any suggestions?
Sorry?
Does Ian have any suggestions because of the work that he's in and the work that he's involved with?
So anything you want to say, and I know Maggie was keen to also comment, but I think there might be also lovely for you both to perhaps exchange details or emails so that you can have a conversation. Ian, was there anything you wanted to add? But I know, Maggie, you were patiently waiting. So I suggest Maggie, and then Ian, if there was anything you wanted to add on that point, please do put up your hand, and then it'll be good to bring you in. I know that, Maggie, you were keen to say something.
Well, I think a critical thing is training everyone to value and respect diversity. And I mean all forms of diversity. And also to listen and respond empathetically to what they're told.
And that's a lovely link to Maggie in your work. So Maggie.
Yeah, I have a couple of thoughts really, and it's an open question, but I wonder if there's a lot more anxiety that young people are facing now. When I just think about the knife crime, I call it an epidemic. Thankfully, it's calmed down because, you know, we have another war that we're fighting at the moment. But I think it's a very real concern for a lot of young people. If they themselves are not impacted by it, their friends are closely impacted by it. A young lady that I know, she's in uni. She's friends that are in uni that have been killed. These are her friends. She's not a member of a gang.
And the mobility is affected.
So I think there is that fear that feels very real, which can be so disabling and can impact upon people actually thinking, is it worth my while really going for things in the way that they possibly could have done previously? So I think there is something there, and we just need to think about how it is we can support them.
It's very powerful what you're saying here, and I'm just struck by something that Leigh was just messaging me about, and I'm going to invite Leigh in on this moment. One of the things that jumps out to me from this is also, and picking up on this, the thread of the conversation from what Ian was saying, what Martin was saying before, Rob was saying, Iris was saying, and so on, and Maggie was saying, I guess there's an invitation, and this, we touched on this, I think in the first session. The world that we step back into after this, and because things are going to look very different, aren't they? I was struck last time when, Darren, you made the point that, for example, that you said your own field is going to probably be look radically different in the law and how people practice, for example. So I think there's all sorts of opportunities, isn't there, about, you know, people will be asking themselves all sorts of questions. What do I do for a living? Am I doing what I'm doing for a living? Employers will be asking themselves, how are we going to be structuring our workforce? Do we need more people? Do we need to have this infrastructure of these buildings? Could we have more people be working more flexibly?
I think there's scope for another book there for you, Rasheed.
You know, yeah. So there's so many things there, isn't there? There's so many opportunities. But the one thing I want to add before I invite Leigh in here, and I'm happy to carry on until 1:15 if others are, is that when Martin, the things you were saying, one thing that jumped out to me was my very first experience in the workplace when I was 18. I just happened to have, and I know you do this well there at West London, Maggie, where you work, is that I had the most incredible induction. The induction was great. I saw a great film about the organisation. There was a really good structured induction. I was shown everywhere. I was taken under the wing of my team. I was made to feel that I was valued, and I was encouraged and I was enthused, and I was told some basic things which I carry with me to this day. And I was very young and hungry. You know, I was hungry to succeed. So I feel if that the right support and the right environment is there, all sorts of incredible things can happen. And it's great that we've got people doing the kind of work that you're doing, Martin, the work that you're doing, Rob, and through Reach and so on, to kind of give young people another way. And I know other people do it outside. Maggie, I know you have those other roles as well. But Leigh, I want to turn to you because I know some things in this conversation were resonating with you. Anything that you wanted to add or share?
I just have to be very brief. I unfortunately have another call I have to join in a second. But something that I kind of invited Rasheed, or encouraging Rasheed to do, is maybe to have a part 2 of something like this, because I think there's a lot of us who want to do something, who want to help, and have a lot of feel very inspired and very encouraged to work with, especially with unemployment in South Africa. I think, as many of you might know, usually we have 30% unemployment as a given, and in a place like Zimbabwe we have 80% unemployment as a given. So, you know, working with very, very high statistics, not a lot of opportunities for people. So people are, under normal circumstances, they are facing immense challenges. So, you know, with this kind of crisis on top of it, it's really, in one way it's a complete disaster, but in another way it's a very, very powerful opportunity for people to be able to support and to be able to inspire some change, because it's not that people don't want to do, they just feel that they don't have any opportunities. And I think this is the thing, how to make that connect for people to have opportunities. It's not that they don't have energy, that they're not creative. Especially in South Africa, people are incredibly creative, but there just isn't a way to mobilize people and to help people to be able to take action. So I think there's a lot of frustration in a lot of I can only say for South Africans, some of the youth that I'm connected to, they're so frustrated because they want to do something, but they just don't know how. They don't know where to start. They don't know how to connect the dots. So I guess just a sort of an invitation, maybe at some point a brainstorming or something.
We will do that.
One feels helpless, you know, one feels very helpless in many ways, but how does one support, and how do people support themselves?
I think that's a really good point. I think I'll take that. I've written down maybe inspiring, involving and empowering as the theme maybe for next time, because I think—
Great idea.
Yeah, yeah. And Leigh, I know we're going to have to let you go, but that might be a lovely parting gift for us to think about as we then slowly begin to wrap up. I'm not going to wrap it up just yet. But
I need to go as well. I need to go as well, Rash.
Sure.
Nice hearing you again, Leigh. Be safe, everyone.
Sure.
Take care, Rob.
Take care, Rob.
Thank you,
Take
Rob.
care,
And
Leigh.
thank you so much, Leigh.
Bye.
So I feel that then, thank you so much. So I feel as though this is, it's lovely. I think this is beginning to gently invite us to begin to slightly wrap up. I think there's a number of things here for us to consider, isn't there? This thing about how we can inspire, involve and empower. And I was struck by the things that you were saying, Maggie, Martin, Iris and Ian, everybody that everyone's saying. I wonder if anyone's got any last, and this thing about education, this education theme, isn't there? That's been this big kind of theme. I guess also, I mean, I was struck by something that you said toward the end there, Maggie, is that I wonder if lots of young people, if I stop and I think about it, I'm not sure I would want to be 18 or 16 right now. Because, I mean, again, there's that thing about leadership. There's all sorts of challenges in this world right now, aren't there? You know, from before, I mean, a few years ago, we were talking about how young people were going to get a home and get, you know, now it's what, are they going to have a planet to inherit after this? There's, you know, people's worries about, you know, things like crime and so on, and all sorts of challenges about what kind of a society we want to live in. So that thing around that next generation is really, 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 yeah, I hadn't really been thinking about it much, but thinking about some of the people we've got on this call, Martin, Iris, and so on, it really does resonate with me. Anyone got any last thoughts to share? And Darren, I want to turn to you. Do you have anything that you want to say on this? Because I know that you also, I get the feeling from seeing some of your social media that you're somebody who's not just loyal, you play a part in supporting and encouraging others. Anything that struck you about this education and the new generation element of this that you want to share?
Yeah, I think those coming through exam periods now, from GCSEs to A-levels, even to university exams and professional exams, there's going to be a feeling of disillusionment because they are not able to take their proper exams. Their results are going to be based on their mocks for those at school. And then people taking legal exams, such as the legal practice course to become a solicitor or the bar professional training course to become a barrister. The barrister course is just put on hold until certainly the autumn. So that will affect people looking for pupilages and starting their professional career. And the LPC for solicitors, they're trying to do it online, but that won't be this side of the summer. So there's a feeling of disillusionment and where am I, what can I do, how will I earn money? And I think certainly what's been said about a feeling of empowerment and trying to stay positive is needed, because people have worked 3, 4, 5, 6 years to get to a stage and they've just hit a buffer. And they will be thinking, how can I overcome that? Now it will pass, probably in 12 months, 18 months, I don't know, it will pass. But the question is, those people have racked up a lot of debts, or if they're not at school, they haven't. But if they're in the professional side, they've racked up debts of tuition fees and everything to get there. And they're just wondering, what can I do? How can I stay sane? Will I have the support of my parents or my family? Can I pay my rent this month? All these type of things. And you're going to have a mental health crisis. I'm not a doctor, but soon you're going to have a mental health crisis in the next 6 months of people that just can't cope. And I think a session like that, Rasheed, will be very helpful.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Can
I just say,
Maggie, please.
a thought, which is just that absolutely, Darren, what you said, it so encapsulates, I'm sure, how people are feeling. And in times like this, what I tend to do is to look back to the 60s, to look,
Right.
this is me, you know, to Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, and the things that they struggled real, you know, I'm not saying the struggle is not real now, but what they were able to, you know, I think about, goodness, Muhammad Ali, and the confidence that he had speaking to a white man when black people were not necessarily seen as being, you know, having the same status, but still the confidence that he had. So I guess what I'm saying is about, I guess, drawing from those experiences from the past and those lessons that were learned then, and how people prevailed despite the odds, and in some way using that to kind of arm myself for the future, along with, of course, my faith. So I think that in terms of different sort of webinars, it might be good to have some things that are around lessons that we can kind of learn from history.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And actually, it's interesting, as you were saying that, Maggie, one thing that just jumped out to me was that I wonder if one of the narratives that we're not hearing right now, because we're in the midst of this, you know, this huge challenge. And I think there's a word that Ian used, which was around, there's a lovely kind of inspiring and encouraging and that compassion kind of words, that some of the words that Ian introduced. I wonder if the one things that we're not hearing in this narrative is, I got the feeling that in the 60s, for example, not that I was there.
Nor was I.
I was.
Yeah.
I was there.
So was I.
No, but one thing I get a strong sense of, actually, I got a strong sense of, is that whilst there's all sorts of challenges, again, you know, was there going to be another world war, Cuban Missile Crisis, the civil rights crisis, all sorts of crises, and all sorts of other challenges. Actually, there was also a lot of hope, that trying to the space race, you know, a generation, post-war generation, who were thinking about new ways of living, loving, being, expressing themselves.
I think we're also inspired by a lot of role models
Mm-hmm.
in that period. They might have been pop stars, they might have been all sorts of other people.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I think is important is that I don't think, I mean, I don't know, I never get in a school, but as far as I'm aware, young people aren't taught soft skills, you know, how to listen and respond with empathy and things like that.
Yes.
And it's so important for young people.
Yeah, and I think that's such a good point. And I think that point, and it's going to be even more important, isn't it? Especially if people are being disconnected from that ability,
Sure.
The empathy, the connectivity, how to communicate, and all of those things, which is, you know, and again, it's one of those areas that can create a divide. The people who've gone to certain schools where you are taught those things, and the ones where you're not, it's going to have a huge impact on people's employability. I'm sure you see that, Martin. I can see you're primed.
Yes, because, you know, the emphasis of your conversation today in terms of compassion was about help and care.
Mm-hmm.
As caregivers, what do we provide?
Mm-hmm.
What I find so admirable and so exciting about this forum is that in between Darren, whose knowledge and background is in law, Ian in terms of inclusion and employability, Maggie around health and well-being, these sorts of things, each one of us can look to ourselves and to our colleagues and consider, how do we give help? How do we provide well-being and support? And you can track and trace that in all sorts of very tangible ways. What becomes very difficult, and I know this from 26 years in university, is where they actually pick it up. Do they take up the help that you provide? The call to action is there. Are they using the resources that you are providing? And if they are, in what way are they doing so? I wouldn't dare to suggest that our current young people in their 20s are not doing that. But many, many people want everything done for them. They want you to hand them everything.
I think one of the things that just struck me from there, and I think that just before we kind of close, that I wonder is, and it's a fun challenge to all of us, and some of you might already be doing this, what jumped out to me is the role of mentoring. the value in mentoring, formally and informally. And of course, we know all sorts of great mentoring happens informally. And there's a couple of people who I don't advertise that I mentor because I'm very busy in my work as a coach, but there's a couple of people who I do informally mentor, one of whom's in their early 20s and one's in their early 30s. And I think one of the things that this conversation, the tail end of it, has really struck me is the importance of that, because there are so many things. I remember very early in my career wondering how the people who were probably only in their 40s at the time, were senior and, you know, managers, how when there were different challenges and crises, how they coped, how they dealt with it. I thought, how did they do that? Well, I've learned since it's only experience, right? So there's something for me about that thing about taking people under our own wing. So sure, there might be formal programs in our organizations, but what's the role that informally that we could do to help support and mentor? Now, I'm sure many of us do in our families, friendships, nieces, you name it, or perhaps people through church, mosque, synagogue, wherever do that, or voluntary groups. But I think there's something there about for us to reflect on. What of that do we do and how do we do it? Because also sometimes there may not always be the ability to articulate, or there might be all sorts of other things that are going on for young people.
Yeah, sure.
To kind of assume. But that's one of the things I also want to take away from me and take away as my kind of takeaway challenge, and to reflect on how I mentor and how I can help people with those life skills as well as those professional skills. Because I guess it can be, as Maggie was saying, that it can be also quite scary. It can be really daunting. And I wonder if a lot of the time actually lots of people are actually scared and frightened or overwhelmed, or just don't know where to start. So on that note, wow, I just want to thank you all. And I wonder if each person could just end with just one word, the word that maybe you want to carry away with you, or it's a word that you might want to offer. There might be either a word that you're wanting to take away and a word to offer. So I know that you've been at the bar, Darren, so you're not going to be thrown by being asked first. So a word that you're going to take away and a word to offer us, perhaps.
So the word to take away would be inspirational. For all the comments and the different disciplines that we've had in the experiences. And the word to offer would be, let me give that some thought. The word to offer would be, I'll use your word, to be compassionate in these times. But that's your word.
Who's next? Ian.
Admiration and mentoring.
Yeah.
Very good.
Iris. No? Wait, is that your phone? I was just wondering, is there a word that you wanted to take away and a word you want to offer us?
Positivity.
Lovely. We'll take that word for both bits. I love that. That's lovely. Thank you. Maggie.
I think I'll use the word compassion, but for me that would demonstrate itself in terms of patience. Having patience with myself and having patience with others.
Martin.
Commitment. Because nothing gets done if you actually don't commit yourself to doing what it is that you're planning to do. The word that I think I would still offer as a takeaway is care. And the interesting thing about the word care is that there's the thing that we give in terms of teaching, training, and supporting, but there's the other thing that I think is vitally important. You actually have to care. I'm not doing that because I don't care. I want to do that because I actually care.
Yeah.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I want to just offer you, picking up on that, maybe self-care. I'm mindful for all of you supporting others. I think that's really important for us right now. I want to offer, to be mindful about one's own self-care. And thank you is the word I also want to just offer you from me. Thank you very much.
Will there be another one of these on Wednesday next week?
Next Wednesday, the same link. Please spread the word, and please, it'll be great to see you all again. It'll be great to pick up this conversation and the connectivities and the cross conversations. Thank you all so much. I think lunch is calling us all. Thank you. Thank you, Mick.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rasheed.
Thanks, Rasheed.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.